George Roger Waters is an English musician, singer, songwriter and composer. In 1965, he co-founded the progressive rock band Pink Floyd with drummer Nick Mason, keyboardist Richard Wright and guitarist, singer and songwriter Syd Barrett. Waters initially served as the group's bassist and co-lead vocalist, but following the departure of Barrett in 1968, he also became their lyricist and conceptual leader. Pink Floyd subsequently achieved international success with the concept albums The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall and The Final Cut. By the early 1980s, they had become one of the most critically acclaimed and best-selling acts in the history of popular music. As of 2013, they have sold more than 250 million albums worldwide, including 74.5 million units sold in the United States. Amid creative differences within the group, Waters left in 1985 and began a legal dispute with the remaining members over their intended use of the band's name and material. They settled out of court in 1987, and nearly 18 years had passed before he performed with them again. Waters' solo career has included 3 studio albums, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, Radio KAOS and Amused to Death. In 1990, he staged one of the largest and most extravagant rock concerts in history, the Walla Live in Berlin, with an official attendance of 200,000. As a member of Pink Floyd, he was inducted into the US Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1996 and the UK Music Hall of Fame in 2005. That same year he released Aira, an opera in 3 acts translated from a Permelchen and Nadine Roder-Gill's libretto about the French Revolution. Later that year, he reunited with Pink Floyd bandmates Mason, Wright and David Gilmour for the Live 8 Global Awareness event. It was the group's first appearance with Waters since 1981. He has toured extensively as a solo act since 1999 and played The Dark Side of the Moon in its entirety for his world tour of 2006–2008. In 2010, he began The Wall Live and in 2011 Gilmour and Mason appeared with him during a performance of the double album in London. As of 2013, the tour is the highest grossing of all time by a solo artist. Waters has been married 4 times. First in 1969 to his childhood sweetheart Judy Trim. They had no children together and divorced in 1975. The following year he married Lady Caroline Christie. The marriage produced a son, Harry Waters, a musician who has played keyboards with his father's touring band since 2006, and a daughter, India Waters, who has worked as a model. Christie and Waters divorced in 1992, and in 1993, he married Priscilla Phillips. They had 1 son together, Jack Fletcher, before getting divorced in 2001. In 2012, Waters married actress and filmmaker Laurie Durning. 1943–1964, early years, George Roger Waters was born on September 6, 1943, the younger of 2 boys, to Mary and Eric Fletcher Waters, in Great Bullockham, Surrey. His father, the son of a coal miner and Labour Party activist, was a schoolteacher, a devout Christian, and a Communist Party member. In the early years of the Second World War, his father was a conscientious objector who drove an ambulance during the Blitz. He later changed his stance on pacifism and joined the British Army, and as a 2LT of the 8th Royal Fusiliers died at Aprilia, between Enzio and Rome in Italy, on February 18, 1944, when Roger was 5 months old. On February 19, 2014, Waters unveiled a monument to his father and other war casualties there, and was made an honorary citizen of Enzio. Following her husband's death, Mary Waters, also a teacher, moved with her 2 sons to Cambridge and raised them there. Roger Waters' earliest memory is of the VJ Day celebrations. Mary Waters died in 2009, aged 96. Waters attended Morley Memorial Junior School in Cambridge and then the Cambridgeshire High School for Boys with Syd Barrett, while his future musical partner, David Gilmour, lived nearby on the city's Mill Road, and attended the Perse School. At 15, Waters was chairman of the Cambridge Youth Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, having designed its publicity poster and participated in its organisation. Though he was a keen sportsman and a highly regarded member of the high school's cricket and rugby teams, he disliked his educational experience. According to Waters, "I hated every second of it, apart from games. The regime at school was a very oppressive near. The same kids who are susceptible to bullying by other kids are also susceptible to bullying by the teachers." Whereas Waters knew Barrett and Gilmour from his childhood in Cambridge, he met future Pink Floyd founder members Nick Mason and Richard Wright in London at the Regent Street Polytechnic School of Architecture. Waters enrolled there in 1962, after a series of aptitude tests indicated he was well suited to that field. He had initially considered a career in mechanical engineering. 1965–1985, Pink Floyd. Formation and Barrett-led period. By September 1963, Waters and Mason had lost interest in their studies. They had moved into the lower flat of Stanhope Gardens, owned by Mike Leonard, a part-time tutor at the Regent Street Polytechnic. Waters, Mason and Wright first played music together in the autumn of 1963, in a band formed by vocalist Keith Noble and bassist Clive Metcalf. They usually called themselves Sigmore Six, but also used the name The Megadeths. Waters played rhythm guitar and Mason played drums, Wright played on any keyboards he could arrange to use, and Noble's sister Sheila provided an occasional vocal accompaniment. In the early years the band performed during private functions and rehearsed in a tea room in the basement of Regent Street Polytechnic. When Metcalf and Noble left to form their own group in September 1963, the remaining members asked Barrett and guitar player Bob Close to join. By January 1964, the group became known as the Abdubs, or the Screaming Abdubs. During the autumn of 1964, the band used the names Leonard's Lodgers, Spectrum 5, and eventually, the T-Set. Sometime during the autumn of 1965, the T-Set began calling itself the Pink Floyd Sound, later the Pink Floyd, and by early 1966, Pink Floyd. By early 1966 Barrett was Pink Floyd's frontman, guitarist, and songwriter. He wrote or co-wrote all but one track of their debut LP The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, released in August 1967. Waters contributed the song Take Up Thy Stethoscope and Walk to the album. By late 1967, Barrett's deteriorating mental health and increasingly erratic behavior, rendered him unable or unwilling to continue in his capacity as Pink Floyd singer-songwriter and lead guitarist. In early March 1968 Pink Floyd met with managers Peter Jenner and Andrew King of Black Hill Enterprises to discuss the band's future. Barrett agreed to leave Pink Floyd, and the band agreed to Black Hill's entitlement in perpetuity regarding past activities. The band's new manager Steve Earle made a formal announcement about the departure of Barrett and the arrival of David Gilmour in April 1968. Waters-led period. Filling the void left by Barrett's departure in March 1968, Waters began to chart Pink Floyd's artistic direction. He became the principal songwriter, lyricist and co-lead vocalist, and would remain the band's dominant creative figure until his departure in 1985. He wrote the lyrics to the 5 Pink Floyd albums preceding his own departure, starting with The Dark Side of the Moon and ending with The Final Cut, while exerting progressively more creative control over the band and its music. Every Waters studio album since The Dark Side of the Moon has been a concept album. With lyrics written entirely by Waters, The Dark Side of the Moon was one of the most commercially successful rock albums ever. It spent 736 straight weeks on the Billboard 200 chart until July 1988 and sold over 40 million copies worldwide. It was continuing to sell over 8,000 units every week as of 2005. According to Pink Floyd biographer Glenn Povey, Dark Side is the world's second best-selling album, and the United States' 21st best-selling album of all time. Waters produced thematic ideas that became the impetus for the Pink Floyd concept albums The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals and The Wall written largely by Waters and The Final Cut written entirely by Waters. He referred or alluded to the cost of war and the loss of his father throughout his work, from Corporal Clegg, and Free for To Us and Them from The Dark Side of the Moon, When the Tigers Broke Free, first used in the feature film, The War, later included with the Fletcher Memorial Home on the final cut, an album dedicated to his father. The theme and composition of The War was influenced by his upbringing in an English society depleted of men after the Second World War. The double album The War was written almost entirely by Waters and is largely based on his life story, and having sold over 23 million RIAA-certified units in the US as of 2013, is one of the top 3 best-selling albums of all time in America, according to RIAA. Pink Floyd hired Bobby Zrin to co-produce the album, and cartoonist Gerald Scarfe to illustrate the album's sleeve art. The band embarked on the Wall tour of Los Angeles, New York, London, and Dortmund. The last band performance of The Wall was on June 16, 1981, at Earl's Court, London, and this was Pink Floyd's last appearance with Waters until the band's brief reunion at July 2, 2005 Live 8 concert in London's Hyde Park, 24 years later. In March 1983, the last Waters Gilmour Mason collaboration, The Final Cut, was released. The album was subtitled, A Requiem for the Post-War Dream by Roger Waters, performed by Pink Floyd. Waters wrote all the album's lyrics as well as the music. His lyrics were critical of the Conservative Party government of the day and mention Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher by name. At the time Gilmour did not have any new material, so he asked Waters to delay the recording until he could write some songs, but Waters refused. According to Mason, after power struggles within the band and creative arguments about the album, Gilmour's name disappeared from the production credits, though he retained his pay. Rolling Stone magazine gave the album 5 stars, with Kurt Loder describing it as a superlative achievement, and art rock's crowning masterpiece. Loder viewed the work as essentially a Roger Waters solo album. Amidst creative differences within the group, Waters left Pink Floyd in 1985, and began a legal battle with the remaining band members regarding their continued use of the name and material. In December 1985, Waters issued a statement to EMI and CBS invoking the leaving member clause on his contract. In October 1986, he initiated high court proceedings to formally dissolve the Pink Floyd partnership. In his submission to the High Court he called Pink Floyd a spent force creatively. Gilmour and Mason opposed the application and announced their intention to continue as Pink Floyd. Waters claims to have been forced to resign much like Wright some years earlier, and he decided to leave Pink Floyd based on legal considerations, stating, "Because, if I hadn't, the financial repercussions would have wiped me out completely." In December 1987, an agreement between Waters and Pink Floyd was reached. According to Mason, "We eventually formalized a settlement with Roger. On Christmas Eve, 1987, David and Roger convened for a summit meeting on the houseboat, the Astoria with Jerome Walton, David's accountant. Jerome painstakingly typed out the bones of a settlement. Essentially although there was far more complex detail the arrangement allowed Roger to be freed from his arrangement with Steve, and David and me to continue working under the name Pink Floyd. In the end the court accepted Jerome's version as the final and binding document and duly stamped it. Waters was released from his contractual obligation with ERC, and he retained the copyrights to the Wall concept and his trademarked inflatable pig. The Gilmour-led Pink Floyd released 2 studio albums, A Momentary Lapse of Reason, and The Division Bell. As of 2013, it is estimated that Pink Floyd have sold over 250 million albums worldwide, including 74.5 million RIAA-certified units sold in the US. 1984 present, solo career, 1984 1996. Following the release of The Final Cut, Waters embarked on a solo career that produced 3 concept albums and a movie soundtrack. In 1984, he released his first solo album, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, a project about a man's dreams across one night that dealt with Waters' feelings about monogamy and family life versus the call of the wild. In the end the character, Reg, chooses love and matrimony over promiscuity. The album featured guitarist Eric Clapton, jazz saxophonist David Sanborn, and artwork by Gerald Scarfe. Kurt Loder described the pros and cons of Hitchhiking as a strangely static, faintly hideous record. Rolling Stone rated the album a rock-bottom 1 star. Years later, Mike DeGan of AllMusic praised the album for its ingenious symbolism and brilliant use of stream of consciousness within a subconscious realm, rating it 4 out of 5 stars. Waters began touring in support of the new album, aided by Clapton, a new band, new material, and a selection of Pink Floyd favorites. Waters' copyright butted his tour in Stockholm on June 16, 1984. Poor ticket sales plagued the tour, and some of the larger venues had to be cancelled. By his own estimate, he lost £400,000 on the tour. In March 1985, Waters went to North America to play smaller venues with the pros and cons plus some old Pink Floyd stuff at a North America Tour 1985. The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking has been certified gold by the RIAA. In 1986, Waters contributed songs and a score to the soundtrack of the animated movie When the Wind Blows, based on the Raymond Briggs book of the same name. His backing band featuring Paul Carrack was credited as the Bleeding Heart Band. In 1987, Waters released Radio KAOS, a concept album based on a mute man named Billy from an impoverished Welsh mining town who has the ability to physically tune into radio waves in his head. Billy first learns to communicate with a radio DJ, and eventually to control the world's computers. Angry at the state of the world in which he lives, he simulates a nuclear attack. Waters followed the release with a supporting tour also in 1987. In November 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and in July 1990 Waters staged one of the largest and most elaborate rock concerts in history, the Walla Live in Berlin, on the vacant terrain between Potsdamer Platz and the Brandenburg Gate. The show reported an official attendance of 200,000, though some estimates are as much as twice that, with approximately 1 billion television viewers. Leonard Cheshire asked him to do the concert to raise funds for charity. Waters' group of musicians included Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison, Cyndi Lauper, Bryan Adams, Scorpions, and Shiner copyright Ed O'Connor. Waters also used an East German symphony orchestra and choir, a Soviet marching band, and a pair of helicopters from the U.S. 7th Airborne Command and Control Squadron. Designed by Mark Fisher, the wall was 25 meters tall and 170 meters long and was built across the set. Scarf's inflatable puppets were recreated on an enlarged scale, and although many rock icons received invitations to the show, Gilmour, Mason, and Wright did not. Waters released a concert double album of the performance which has been certified platinum by the RIAA. In 1990, Waters hired manager Mark Fennick and left EMI for a worldwide deal with Columbia. He released his third studio album, Amused to Death, in 1992. The record is heavily influenced by the events of the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989 and the Gulf War, and a critique of the notion of war becoming the subject of entertainment, particularly on television. The title was derived from the book Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. Patrick Leonard, who worked on A Momentary Lapse of Reason, co-produced the album. Jeff Beck played lead guitar on many of the album's tracks, which were recorded with an impressive cast of musicians at 10 different recording studios. It is Waters' most critically acclaimed solo recording, garnering some comparison to his previous work with Pink Floyd. Waters described the record as a stunning piece of work, ranking the album with Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall as one of the best of his career. The album had one hit, the song, What God Wants, PT1, which reached number 35 in the UK in September 1992 and number 5 on Billboard's mainstream rock tracks chart in the US. Amused to Death was certified silver by the British phonographic industry. Sales of Amused to Death topped out at around 1 million and there was no tour in support of the album. Waters would first perform material from it 7 years later during his In the Flesh tour. In 1996, Waters was inducted into the US and UK Rock and Roll Halls of Fame as a member of Pink Floyd. 1999 – 2004, in 1999, after a 12-year hiatus from touring, and a 7-year absence from the music industry, Waters embarked on the In the Flesh tour, performing both solo and Pink Floyd material. The tour was a financial success in the US, and though Waters had booked mostly smaller venues, tickets sold so well that many of the concerts were upgraded to larger ones. The tour eventually stretched across the world and would span 3 years. A concert film was released on CD and DVD, named In the Flesh a Euro Live. During the tour, he played 2 new songs, Flickering Flame, and Each Small Candle, as the final encore to many of the shows. In June 2002, he completed the tour with a performance in front of 70,000 people at the Glastonbury Festival of Performing Arts, playing 15 Pink Floyd songs and 5 songs from his solo catalogue. Miramax announced in mid-2004 that a production of The Wall was to appear on Broadway, with Waters playing a prominent role in the creative direction. Reports stated that the musical contained not only the original tracks from The Wall, but also songs from Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and other Pink Floyd albums, as well as new material. On the night of May 1, 2004, recorded extracts from the opera, including its overture, were played on the occasion of the Welcome Europe celebrations in the accession country of Malta. Gert Hoff mixed recorded excerpts from the opera into a continuous piece of music, which was played as an accompaniment to a large light and fireworks display over Grand Harbour in Valletta. In July 2004, Waters released 2 new tracks on the internet, To Kill the Child, inspired by the 2003 invasion of Iraq, and Leaving Beirut, an anti-war song inspired by his travels in the Middle East as a teenager. 2005 A Euro Present. In July 2005, Waters reunited with Mason, Wright, and Gilmour for what would be their final performance together at the 2005 Live 8 concert in London's Hyde Park, Pink Floyd's only appearance with Waters since their final performance of The Wall at Earl's Court, London 24 years earlier. He played a 23-minute set consisting of Speak to Me, Breathe, Money, Wish You Were Here, and Comfortably Numb. Waters told the Associated Press that while the experience of playing with Pink Floyd again was positive, the chances of a bona fide reunion would be slight considering his and Gilmour's continuing musical and ideological differences. Though Waters had differing ideas about which songs they should play, he agreed to roll over for one night only. Gilmour told the Associated Press, "The rehearsals convinced me it wasn't something I wanted to be doing a lot of. There have been all sorts of farewell moments in people's lives and careers which they have then rescinded, but I think I can fairly categorically say that there won't be a tour or an album again that I take part in. It isn't to do with animosity or anything like that. It's just that I've been there, I've done it." In November 2005, Pink Floyd were inducted into the UK Music Hall of Fame by Pete Townshend of The Who. In September 2005, Waters released Aira, an opera in 3 acts translated from the later Permelchen Roda Gil's French libretto based on the historical subject of the French Revolution. Aira was released as a double CD album, featuring baritone Bryn Terfel, soprano Wang Huang and tenor Paul Groves. Set during the early French Revolution, the original libretto was co-written in French by Roda Gil and his wife Nadine Delahaye. Waters had begun rewriting the libretto in English in 1989, and said about the composition, "I've always been a big fan of Beethoven's choral music, Berlioz and Borodina. This is unashamedly romantic and resides in that early 19th century tradition, because that's where my tastes lie in classical and choral music." Waters appeared on television to discuss the opera, but the interviews often focused instead on his relationship with Pink Floyd, something Waters would take in stride, a sign Pink Floyd biographer Mark Blake believes to be a testament to his mellower old age or 20 years of dedicated psychotherapy. Aira reached number 5 on the Billboard Classical Music chart in the United States. In June 2006, Waters commenced The Dark Side of the Moon Live Tour, a 2-year, world-spanning effort that began in Europe in June and North America in September. The first half of the show featured both Pink Floyd songs and Waters' solo material, while the second half included a complete live performance of the 1973 Pink Floyd album The Dark Side of the Moon, the first time in over 3 decades that Waters has performed the album. The shows ended with an encore from the third side of the wall. He utilized elaborate staging by concert lighting designer Mark Brickman, complete with laser lights, fog machines, pyrotechnics, psychedelic projections, and inflatable floating puppets controlled by a handler dressed as a butcher, and a full 360-degree quadraphonic sound system was used. Nick Mason joined Waters for the Dark Side of the Moon set and the encores on select 2006 tour dates. Waters continued touring in January 2007 in Australia and New Zealand, then Asia, Europe, South America, and back to North America in June. In March 2007, the Waters song, Hello, was featured in the science fiction film The Last Mimsy. The song plays over the film's end credits. He released it as a single, on CD and via download, and described it as a song that captures the themes of the movie, the clash between humanity's best and worst instincts, and how a child's innocence can win the day. He performed at California's Coachella Festival in April 2008 and was to be among the headlining artists performing at Live Earth 2008 in Mumbai, India in December 2008, but that concert was cancelled in light of the 26 November terrorist attacks in Mumbai. Waters confirmed the possibility of an upcoming solo album which might be called Heartland, and has said he has numerous songs written that he intends to release when they are a complete album. In June 2010, Waters released a cover of We Shall Overcome, a protest song rewritten and arranged by Guy Caron and Pete Seeger at the Highlander Folk School, possibly derived either from the refrain of a gospel hymn published by Charles Albert Tindley in 1901, but more likely from Louise Shropshire's hymn, If My Jesus Wills. He performed with David Gilmour at the Hoping Foundation benefit evening in July 2010. The four-song set included, To Know Him Is to Love Him, which was played in early Pink Floyd sound checks, followed by Wish You Were Here, Comfortably Numb, and Another Brick in the Wall. In September 2010, Waters commenced the Wall Live Tour, an updated version of the original Pink Floyd shows, featuring a complete performance of The Wall. According to Cole Murriton of the Daily Mail, the touring version of Pink Floyd's The Wall is one of the most ambitious and complex rock shows ever. And it is estimated that the tour cost £37 million to stage. Waters told the Associated Press that the Wall tour will likely be his last, stating, I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm not like B.B. King, or Muddy Waters. I'm not a great vocalist or a great instrumentalist or whatever, but I still have the fire in my belly, and I have something to say. I have a swan song in me and I think this will probably be it. At the O2 Arena in London on May 12, 2011, Gilmour and Mason once again appeared with Waters and Gilmour performing Comfortably Numb, and Gilmour and Mason joining Waters for Outside the Wall. For the first half of 2012, Waters' tour topped worldwide concert ticket sales, having sold more than 1.4 million tickets globally. As of 2013, The Wall Live is the highest-grossing tour of all time by a solo artist. Waters performed at the Concert for Sandy Relief at Madison Square Garden on December 12, 2012. Personal life: in 1969, Waters married his childhood sweetheart Judy Trim, a successful potter. She was featured on the gatefold sleeve of the original release of Ummagumma, but excised from subsequent CD reissues. They had no children together and divorced in 1975. Trim died in 2001. In 1976, Waters married Lady Caroline Christie, the niece of the third Marquess of Zetland. His marriage to Christie produced a son, Harry Waters, a musician who has played keyboards with his father's touring band since 2006, and a daughter, India Waters, who has worked as a model. Christie and Waters divorced in 1992. In 1993, he married Priscilla Phillips. They had one son together, Jack Fletcher. Their marriage ended in 2001. In 2004, he became engaged to actress and filmmaker Lori Durning. The two married on January 14, 2012. Activism: after the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and subsequent tsunami disaster, Waters performed Wish You Were Here with Eric Clapton during a benefit concert on the American network NBC. He was outspoken against the Hunting Act of 2004, and performed a concert for, and attended marches supporting, the Countryside Alliance. Waters explained, "I've become disenchanted with the political and philosophical atmosphere in England. The anti-hunting bill was enough for me to leave England. I did what I could, I did a concert and 1 or 2 articles, but it made me feel ashamed to be English. I was in Hyde Park for both the Countryside Alliance marches. There were hundreds of thousands of us there. Good, honest English people. That's one of the most divisive pieces of legislation we've ever had in Great Britain. It's not a case of whether or not I agree with fox hunting, but I will defend to the hilt their right to take part in it. In October 2005, he clarified, I come back to the UK quite often. I didn't leave as a protest against the hunting ban. I was following a child in the wake of a divorce. After leaving Britain, he moved to Long Island in New York with his fiancée copyright Lori Durning. In June 2007, Waters became a spokesman for Millennium Promise, a non-profit organization that helps fight extreme poverty and malaria. He wrote an opinion piece for CNN in support of the topic. In July, he participated in the American leg of the Live Earth concert, an international multi-venue concert aimed at raising awareness about global climate change, featuring the Trenton Youth Choir and his trademarked inflatable pig. Waters told David Fricke why he thinks the wall is still relevant today. The loss of a father is the central prop on which the wall stands. As the years go by, children lose their fathers again and again, for nothing. You see it now with all these fathers, good men and true, who lost their lives and limbs in Iraq for no reason at all. I've done Bring the Boys Back Home in my encore on recent tours. It feels more relevant and poignant to be singing that song now than it did in 1979. In 2012, Waters led a benefit for United States military veterans called Stand Up for Heroes. He invited a music group of combat wounded veterans called Music Corps to perform with him. In June 2013, Waters and numerous other celebrities appeared in a video showing support for Bradley Manning. Political views. Waters has been outspoken about Middle Eastern politics, and in June 2009 he openly opposed the Israeli West Bank barrier, calling it an obscenity that should be torn down. Later that year, he pledged his support to the Gaza Freedom March, and in 2011 he announced that he had joined the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement against Israel. Waters spoke about his support for BDS, stating that he has been very disillusioned with UK foreign policy since Wilson. It was such a political turnabout from Keir Hardie and Attlee and the principles of British socialism. In October 2010, after an animated B-52 bomber had been shown dropping symbols including the Star of David as part of the Wall Live tour, the Anti-Defamation League attacked Waters, saying that he had used imagery long associated with stereotypes about Jews and money, and had crossed the line into anti-Semitism. In response, he wrote an open letter to The Independent in which he commented, "If I don't respond, people will see the story and will come to believe I'm anti-Semitic, and I'm not. Nothing could be further from the truth." He explained that the artwork used during his shows is representative of religious and national and commercial interests, all of which have a malign influence on our lives and prevent us from treating each other decently. He added, "You can attack Israeli policy without being anti-Jewish. It's like saying if you criticize the U.S. policy you are being anti-Christian. I'm critical of the Israeli policy of occupying Palestinian land and their policy of building settlements, which is entirely illegal under international law, and also of ghettoizing the people whose land they are building on. It's that foreign policy I'm against. It's nothing to do with the religion." In March 2013, during an interview with Electronic Intifada, Waters stated that the American media was under instructions from somewhere not to report criticism of Israel to the American public, on what grounds I cannot guess. On July 20, 2013, during a concert in Belgium, Waters' road crew released a pig-shaped balloon that had been painted with symbols including a Star of David, other political symbols shown including representing fascist, communist and capitalist representations. As the balloon floated over the audience, Waters sang the lyrics to In the Flesh Get Him Up Against the Wall, that one looks Jewish and that one's a coon, who let all of this riffraff into the room while holding a machine gun replica and wearing a long black leather jacket with a red and white armband reminiscent of a Nazi uniform. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center attacked him, Waters deployed a classic disgusting medieval anti-Semitic caricature widely used by both Nazi and Soviet propaganda to incite hatred against Jews. Waters responded to the accusations, characterizing Cooper's statement as wild and bigoted with an entirely predictable resulting rant. Waters commented, "I should point out that in the show, I also use the crucifix, the crescent and star, the hammer and sickle, the Shell Oil logo and the McDonald Euro unregistered trademark S sign, a dollar sign and a Mercedes sign." Waters explained that his father had died fighting Nazis and that he grew up in post-war England, receiving an in-depth education about the war. "I was spared no horrific detail of the heinous crimes committed in the name of that most foul ideology." Waters stated that the Wall show is many things. It is thoughtful, life-affirming, ecumenical, humane, loving, anti-war, anti-colonial, pro-universal access to the law, pro-liberty, pro-collaboration, pro-dialogue, pro-peace, anti-authoritarian, anti-fascist, anti-apartheid, anti-dogma, international in spirit, musical and satirical. It is not anti-Semitic or pro-Nazi. Waters clarified his position regarding the use of religious imagery. "The Star of David represents Israel and its policies and is legitimately subject to any and all forms of non-violent protest." Waters stated that the pig balloon represents the evil of errant government. He added, "For the sake of some perspective, the inflatable pega has appeared at every Wall show since September 2010, some 193 shows, and yours is the first complaint." During a December 2013 interview in Counterpunch magazine, Waters made statements urging musicians to boycott Israel in response to their continued occupation of Palestine. He compared Israeli domestic policies with those of Nazi Germany, stating, "The parallels with what went on in the 30s in Germany are so crashingly obvious." In response, author Rabbi Shimli Boutich accused Waters of anti-Semitism. Waters defended himself, pointing out that he was not criticizing Jews or Israelis in general, but the actions of the Israeli state against the Palestinians. Equipment and instruments. Waters' primary instrument in Pink Floyd was the electric bass guitar. He briefly played a Har-Paragraph FNER bass but replaced it with a Rickenbacker RM 1999 4000 First S, until 1970 when it was stolen along with the rest of the band's equipment in New Orleans. He began using Fender Precision basses in 1968, originally alongside the Rickenbacker, and then exclusively after the Rickenbacker was lost in 1970. First seen at a concert in Hyde Park, London in July 1970, the Black P bass was rarely used until April 1972 when it became his main stage guitar, and as of October 2, 2010, the basis for a Fender Artist signature model. Waters endorses Roto Sound Jazz Bass 77 flat wound strings. Throughout his career he has used Selmer, WEM, Hiwatt and Ashdown amplifiers but has used Ampeg for the last few tours, also employing delay, tremolo, chorus, stereo panning and phaser effects in his bass playing. Waters experimented with EM Synth A and VCS3 synthesizers on Pink Floyd pieces such as On the Run, Welcome to the Machine, and In the Flesh. He played electric and acoustic guitar on Pink Floyd tracks using Fender, Martin, Ovation and Washburn guitars. He played electric guitar on the Pink Floyd song Sheep, from Animals, and acoustic guitar on several Pink Floyd recordings, such as Pigs on the Wing 1A and A2, also from Animals, Southampton Dock from the Final Cut, and on Mother from the Wall. A Binson Echo Rec 2 echo effect was used on his bass guitar lead track One of These Days. Waters plays clarinet during concert performances of Outside the Wall. Discography. The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, Radio KAOS, Amused to Death, Aira, Citations. Sources. Further reading. External links, official website, media related to Roger Waters at Wikimedia Commons, quotations related to Roger Waters at Wikiquote.